Call this meeting to order at 6 o'clock on October 28th. Thanks to everybody who participated in the Halloween dress up. That is what's going on if you are not aware. The meeting closest to Halloween, student government generally tries to dress up at the Senate meeting. So we will start with a roll call. Please say here or present when I call your name. So Adagarla. Edvate. Anderson. Bender. Bouma. Brown. Emery. Fahim. Grant. Goff. Gonzalez. Hanyang. Hayes. Hovey. Hurley. Klaptatauskas. Lewis. Lona. Ludwig. Mass. Pfeiffer. Rinchi. Simano. Schulte. Simonson. Springer. Stenzel. Stevens. Samuel. Weathers. Young. Zastro. Zavosky. Anderson. Bender. Bouma. Hurley. Simonson. Did I miss anybody? All right, and seeing none or seeing no placards, we have quorum. We'll go with Speaker Ludwig and the Pledge of Allegiance. Since we don't have a program for tonight, we'll go straight to open forum. So open forum is a period for students to discuss issues that are relevant to the student body or student government. So please approach the lectern and state your name and the college that your primary major is in.
Hello, my name is Emily Risvik. I'm your election commissioner. I just wanted to go over the memo that I sent out this afternoon regarding the Election Reform Act and just some key changes that we noticed as Election Commission and just what our recommendations were on those. So starting with 12.9.1, there's a proposed amendment for in cases where the penalty is nullification of elections. Barring from future elections or is greater than $200, the commission will act as a grand jury to determine if there's enough evidence to proceed with a case before the Supreme Court. With this code, we felt like this wouldn't allow for a fair trial for respondents in cases because it imposes a penalty prior to the violation. And so we didn't want to go forward and support this bylaw amendment, this one in specific, as it imposes a presumption of guilt on a respondent prior to the hearing. In our process, penalties are not to be discussed or decided prior to violation hearings, and this creates an assumption upon a campaign that they have already committed a violation of election law. We also have alternative remedies that are outlined in the election code. When unique circumstances arise that would result in different outcomes or a penalty than recommended in Appendix A. The second being 13.5, which has language about injury and violations. Election Commission is an official recognized student organization at ISU affiliated with student government, and we would like to maintain our relationship with the university as an organization. Many election laws may not cause a direct injury to students, but without Election Commission being able to ensure that campaigns are in compliance with these policies, Election Commission or student government could potentially be found liable for violations of code. There's a section regarding 13.2.11.5 about rules of the court. The language currently in the judicial branch rules of the court is tailored to fit the needs of the Supreme Court and not the Election Commission. If you have questions about that, I would direct it to Chief Justice Noah Heasley. But in addition to those, Election Commission would also like for all the rights of the respondent and the procedural rights that are previously existing in the bylaws to remain in the bylaws. And additional concerns were also brought to the Election Commission regarding the timeline and the feasibility of implementing an attorney general with the fall semester already coming to an end. The elections are going to start, or campaigning is going to start on February 28th. And so there is concern whether or not we would have an attorney general prepared for the election season by then. Additional concerns regarded whether or not there was enough data or information supporting that Iowa State should have an attorney general for elections. And then the last concern too was whether or not there was enough collaboration between Election Commission and the Rules Committee regarding the policy and creating that policy. We weren't very directly involved in the process. After multiple attempts of trying to gain in contact with the committee, we did meet once, but we would have wished that we were more directly involved in the process to make sure that all those concerns were identified during that process and worked around. And so those are just some key findings that we found when we went through the bylaws and the proposed amendments that will be made tonight. And so if you have questions, you can ask me or just look through the memo that we sent out. Thank you.
Thank you, Election Commissioner Rizvik. Are there any other comments for open forum? Oh, Grant.
Hello, everyone. I'm Grant. I'm one of the techs that runs the stream over here, and I thought it would be a good time for a little microphone reminder. So, first of all, the microphones are both to send your sound to the stream so that people can see you online. And also, actually, the reason why they originally came around was because of accessibility. Not everyone in the room may be able to hear, especially in a room as large as this. So making sure that for any comment that you make, that it goes on the microphone is important, not only for your constituents watching on the stream, but for your fellow senators that are in the room. And then a little bit of mic technique. So I've got this to represent any of the handheld microphones that you have. If you've got them on a stand, make sure that your face is close to them. The microphone does not bite. The closer you are, the better, because we can turn you down, we can't turn you up. So make sure that if you're holding the microphone that it gets held like this, not like this, because this won't pick it up, not like this. You get the picture. And same goes with these microphones. They're made to pick up from a little bit further away, but the sound is a lot better if you hold it right about here in front of your face, if possible. I know sometimes you're juggling things, but yeah. That's about all I got. Just a friendly reminder on microphones. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, are there any further comments or open forum? Okay, then seeing none, we'll go to adopting the agenda. Are there any amendments to tonight's agenda? Senator Zastro.
(2-032F Phi Sigma Pi) for 1 week.
Okay, there's been a motion to table 032F Phi Sigma Pi for 1 week. There was a second. Is there any objection? Okay, then seeing none, that bill has been tabled for 1 week. Speaker Ludwig.
Yeah, motion to add 2020-2-035F funding outreach ambassadors to the bottom of new business.
Okay, so there's been a motion and a second to add 035F funding outreach ambassadors to the bottom of new business. Is there any objection? All right, then that bill has been added.
Yield.
Okay, so there's been a motion to adopt the agenda and there's a second. Is there any objection?
Wait, object.
There's been an objection. So, all right, Speaker Ludwig.
Sorry, just realized I forgot one. Move to add 2020-2-063 approving the 2020-2021 election apportionments.
Okay, so there's been a motion to add 063SO approving 2021 election apportionments to the bottom of new business. There's been a second. Is there any objection? All right, seeing none, that bill has been added. There's been a motion to adopt the agenda, and there's a second. Is there any objection? Seeing none, the agenda has been adopted. Move to approving the minutes from last week. There's been a motion to approve and a second. Is there any objection? Then seeing none, those minutes are approved. We'll go to committee reports. First is rules with Speaker Ludwig.
All right, we got 2 bills up tonight. We got the Election Reform Act. Finally finished up the last of the amendments of that in committee last week, sent that favorably. And we have the proxy update bill that was sent unfavorably by the committee.
All right, are there any questions for Rules Committee? Then seeing none, we'll go to Finance with Finance Director Class.
Yeah, so this week we have just the Winterfest line item transfer. They couldn't make it tonight, and since we're not allocating the money, we're just moving around their budget. I will be talking for them at that. It's very simple because of the calendar. Winterfest can't happen, so they're line item transferring things that can happen. I sent out my email with the report. Big thing is Finance Committee finished. Oh, sorry. I'll try to move. Sorry. The Finance Committee finished the FY22 PNC draft last night. Approved it. That will be first read next week by you guys. Please look through that. Look through our changes. We're gonna send you like what was last year, what was this year, and we'll highlight the changes for you so you can see what's different. And ask any questions, because some of that stuff is like things that I know really well because that's my job, but all the funding gets passed through you, so like you should also know it as well. Yeah, and then you'll notice on new business there is 2 new debt contracts coming through. As I said in my email, things got a little wonky for sports clubs at the end of last year with COVID. We're trying to get them better at line item transfers. That's always a thing that they need to learn how to do a little bit better, but hopefully gonna get them back on track. These 2 are some interesting situations. And then we'll actually be having a couple of more, one amendment and another contract coming through, most likely this semester. So if you have any questions, as always, I will tell you again, please ask me, Senator Zastro, Senator Lona, Senator Bender, who's not here, Senator Pfeiffer, Chief of Staff Rowling, who's been the finance clerk for 3 years. Like, please ask questions. The majority of what student government does is fun stuff. That's like our tangible thing that we do outside of this. So please ask questions because we want you to understand it just as well as we do. But happy Halloween as well. I love all the costumes. Sorry I didn't bring mine. And yeah, that's it.
All right, are there any questions for Finance Committee? Then we'll go to PR with Senior Director Olson.
Hi, everyone. Awesome. So what we've been doing this week, well, first off, Morgan and Jacob had a fireside chat with ISU PD on Monday. And so on next Friday, there will be a takeover from ISU PD along with their fireside chat video. So stay tuned for that. It looks like it was a super fun time, so I'm excited to see it. Along with that, we have been working on a survey with diversity and inclusion, along with health and wellness, and that survey will be coming out pretty soon. You guys will all get an update on that next week. And along with that, we have also been meeting with residence halls in order to inform them about student government, because a lot of those that are involved in their hall parliaments are also involved in that sort of legislation after they're done with their hall parliaments. So we've been meeting with those individuals along with many other groups, as Eliana has probably told many of you. Along with that, for all of those that are working on the one-pagers for diversity and inclusion, make sure that you look out for those deadlines that are coming up pretty soon. I believe one is on Saturday, so just make sure to look out for those so we can go on to the next step of the process. Along with that, there is a Halloween posting schedule right now if you guys haven't seen, so make sure to comment on those posts, but also after the meeting today, we can take another picture of everyone that's in their costumes, so that's super fun. Along with that, make sure you check out our Green Dot videos. A lot of the athletes at Iowa State were participating in Green Dot this week, so make sure you keep updated on those. Along with that, just make sure to go to the mental health walk on Saturday. We will be tabling, and there's a lot of fun things to do.
All right, are there any questions for Public Relations Committee? Then we'll go to Diversity and Inclusion Committee with Director Perk.
Hi. So the first diversity roundtable as of this afternoon is a go, so that's exciting. And our group of focus for that first one is going to be multicultural students. And again, to just kind of explain like the goal of that, it's about like building community between members of student government and the general student body based on shared identities. So if you identify as a multicultural student, we really want to see you on November 12th at 6 p.m. Zoom link coming soon because everything's virtual nowadays, you know how it is. And then this Sunday, myself and several committee members will be joining the Inner Residence Hall Association to walk around residence halls and locate gender-neutral bathrooms in those buildings, and then add that category of buildings to the project we've been working on. And there's also a member of the D&I committee that is also on the exec team for the International Student Council, and they're going to be conducting a survey on some issues that international students are currently facing. And so once we have results from that, we'll be utilizing that to figure out some initiatives that we could work on over the winter term and put into place soon. But yeah.
All right, any questions for Diversity and Inclusion Committee? Let's see, now we'll go to Student Initiatives Committee with Senator Hovey.
Hi everyone, happy Halloween week. So first off, I think a lot of you may have received a series of haikus from a constituent that is concerned about people riding bikes and running into pedestrians. And last week at our meeting, we talked about this. And it seems that because of COVID-19, the Walk Your Wheels campaign will probably not be able to happen this semester, but we are going to look into bringing back like signs and flyers and stuff like that just to remind bikers to keep right and be safe. After several attempts, we did receive an update from Chief Newton of ISUPD today, so we will start moving forward with the campus safety walk. And finally, Focus Pocus Mental Health Walk is this Saturday at 12 p.m. I think it would be a great opportunity for Senate to get together and have like a little bonding event. Just start off your Halloween day on a good note. And yeah, so yeah, happy Halloween week. That's it from SI.
All right, are there any questions for SI? Then we'll go to Civic Engagement Committee with Senator Samuel.
Yeah, hi everyone. So the last day to early vote is on Saturday at Ames Public Library from 9 to 4 p.m. We have a funding bill tonight for buttons, and so the election's on Tuesday the 3rd, which is this upcoming Tuesday. And with that being said, we will be tabling on Monday and giving out buttons and getting out the vote. So if you want a button, come to the library. I yield.
All right, are there any questions for Civic Engagement? Then we'll go to comments from the executive branch with President Fritz.
Happy Halloween, everybody. So I love all the costumes. I'll start off by saying that. So I will be analyzing them during Senate, and then I'll announce the peppermint brownie winner at the end. But I guess first update of the week is that we had Big 12 conference this past weekend. So Vice President Schrader, Chief of Staff Rowling, Director Bond, Director Campbell, Finance Director Class, Speaker Ludwig, and Vice Speaker Gonzalez and I all attended that, and we were able to hear from other schools about some programs and initiatives that they're working on and how that can be transferred to other universities. And so we were able to give a presentation on college affordability. We also touched on beef and horse barns. It was, it was a good conversation. So we also had a couple sustainability meetings this week, talking about paper towel composting and recycling compactors. As for the paper towel composting, just seeing what the feasibility of a pilot program for that would be, and doing some research with the composting facilities there, in addition to potentially funding some more of those recycling compactors that we see on campus. There are currently 6 of them, and so, potentially adding more there. I also had another academic continuity work group meeting. We basically just discussed more considerations for the spring semester to make classes better there. We filmed a fireside chat with the police department. We got to meet Zosha. She will also be, the service dog will also be there on Saturday at the Focus Pocus Walk, so I'm super excited to go to that. We had our final Principles of Renaming Committee meeting for this stage in the process. That document will open for public comment on November 1st, so you'll be able to read through it and submit any considerations you'd like to make. So I would, highly encourage you to read through that and put that out to your constituents as well. And finally, the mental health walk on Saturday. I just encourage you all to come. I'll be there. It should be a lot of fun. I'm sure a lot of your constituents will be there as well, so that'd be a good chance to chat with them. And that's all I have. Does anyone have any questions?
All right, then seeing no questions, we'll move on to internal matters within internal matters 2020-2-031F, Winterfest line item transfer, and that is with Senator Zastro.
Yep. So as Finance Director Class mentioned earlier, the representative for the club was not able to be here. She had to get tested for COVID on Monday. So although normally for all financial legislation we require that there's a representative for the club, we took a closer look at this and we think that it's fine because it's not actually allocating any money. And because of the specific situation, hopefully we're able to look past this. It's a very run-of-the-mill line item transfer. So it might be better if we were looking at the memo on the screen. Yeah, so Finance Director Class, do you want to talk a little bit about this?
Yeah, sorry. Ooh, wow. Just scares me. I'm not going to go to the front, sorry. But yeah, as I said earlier, Winterfest can't happen because it was originally scheduled for December, and we're not here in December because of the change in time for the semester. So it's just changing everything to virtual, and there might be more coming eventually, but this was just the first thing they're going to do. There's a chance, I think this will be done during November, but if you have any questions, I can just talk about like the logistics of the line item transfer. I don't know when this event is happening. That would be something that Winterfest would know. And I'll yield back to Senator Zastro.
Call the question.
There's been a call to question on the bill, and there's been a second. Is there any objection to voting now on the bill? There's been an objection.
Withdrawn. I yield.
Okay. There's been a motion to add Senator Simonson to the roll. Is there any objection? Senator Simonson has been added. Maybe someone could add Senator Adegarla as well.
Move to add Senator Adegarla to the roll.
All right, there's been a motion to add Senator Adegarla. Is there any objection? All right, Senator Adegarla has been added to the roll as well.
Call the question.
All right, there's been a call to question on the bill in a second. Is there any objection to voting now? Then Senator Zastro with the closing statement.
I decline.
All right, then we'll do a roll call vote. Please say yes, no, or abstain when I call your name. Adegarla. Advait. Anderson. Brown. Emery. Fahim. Grant. Goff. Gonzalez. Anyang. Hayes. Hovey. Baptitauskas. Lewis. Lona. Ludwig. Mass. Pfeiffer. Rinchi. Simano. Schulte. Simonson. Springer. Stenzel. Stevens. Samuel. Weathers. Young. Zastro. Zavosky. All right, then with a vote of 30-0, this line item transfer is approved. We'll now move on to general orders within the general orders 2020-2-030Y, Chapter 8 revisions. That is with Senator Mass.
As mentioned last week, this is a review of Chapter 8, which hasn't been touched in some time due to a lot of changes in how exactly our office assistants and advisors work. So this is just general cleanup to give a little bit more flexibility in defining those positions. So hopefully we don't have to continually keep updating this section, as well as clarifying what we're already doing as a student government. So with that, I'll go ahead and yield.
It's been a call to question. Is there a second? There is a second. So is there any objection? Then Senator Mass. All right, we'll do another roll call vote. Please say yes, no, or abstain when I call your name. Adagarla. Idvate. Anderson. Brown. Emery. Fahim. Grant. Goff. Gonzalez. Hanyang. Hayes. Hovey. Klaptotowskis. Lewis. Lona. Ludwig. Mass. Pfeiffer. Rinchi. Simano. Schulte. Simonson. Springer. Stenzel. Stevens. Samuel. Weathers. Young. Zastro. Zavoski. All right, miss anybody? Then with a vote of 30 to 0, this bylaw change passes. We'll go to 2020-2-028Y, improving access to proxy participation in Senate meetings, and that is with Senator Simonson.
Can I propose amendments right now?
Yes.
Thank you. I move to adopt the Rules Committee amendments.
Okay, so the Rules Committee amendments have been proposed. Since the committee amendments, they don't need a second, so we'll go straight into them. Senator Simonson, since you proposed them, you have the floor.
It's numbering stuff, and then we strike required to be from the first line, and then I'll have a follow-on amendment after that to change that as well. Thank you.
Okay, there's been a call to question on the rules amendments, and there's been a second. Is there any objection to voting now? Okay, then we'll go to a placard vote. We call for unanimous consent. Any objection to approving the Rules Committee amendments by unanimous consent? Seeing none, the Rules Committee amendments have been approved. Senator Simonson, back to you.
Thank you. This is the bill that we read 2 weeks ago. The Rules Committee helped me a lot with helping align it with my intent. Even though they might not like my intent, they were still helpful. One main issue that stands is the Speaker does have some discretion as to what would allow a senator to use a proxy, and so I think the best thing to do is to remove that discretion, leave that up to the senator's judgment that they were elected for, and if that becomes an issue, then the Speaker maintains their ability to issue feasances. So following that hopeful logic, I move to strike from the first enacted clause the words "due to COVID-19" from the bill, and that would remove any question as to whether a senator is allowed to be gone from Senate. It's purely up to the senator to use a proxy.
Okay, so the amendment has been proposed. There was a second. Is there any objection to consideration of the amendment? Then we'll go into debate on it. Senator Simonson.
Yeah, my goal here is to hopefully address the Rules Committee's fears that there'd be discretion over what the Speaker can allow people to, or when the Speaker allows people to have a proxy. We wouldn't want the Speaker disallowing proxies to affect a vote or anything like that. So this leaves it up to the senator. If we ever believe that a senator is not fulfilling their constitutional duties as a senator, then that's what feasances are, I believe then there's a process to take care of that. But generally, this is going into Chapter 17. It's temporary. I don't think there's a huge risk of this being abused. I yield.
All right, we'll go to Senator Debate. Senator Weathers.
Yeah, I think this does address at least my concerns in Rules Committee, except kind of in the opposite way. You remove the Speaker's discretion, which is good. However, you made it even more lenient than I would have liked. If this is going into Chapter 17, which is the COVID-19 section, then we would probably want language in here that specifies senators can only be gone for COVID-19 reasons, just due to the fact that we don't want people to just not show up for any reason that they see fit. I'm sure you're going to hear that a lot. Just my last point, I don't think we want to put anything in Chapter 17 just because we think it might not be around very long. I've heard during the debate the other night, there were estimates that it's going to go until 2022. So we really shouldn't be counting on that. So I'll yield on that.
Senator Zastro.
I kind of have the opposite perspective from Senator Weathers. I think that this is a good amendment to make specifically because it is going into Chapter 17. It's because Chapter 17 has a sunset clause, and although it might not be in the coming months or even at the end of this school year, and we're still using these rules a year from now, what this limits ultimately is it says if somebody's distant from for a meeting for any reason, it's not that somebody can vote on their behalf and just have 2 votes. It says that they can have a proxy, and the procedure by which we have a proxy is one where they already have to be watching the Senate meeting, one where the votes have to be documented and where they're eventually checked by Vice President Schrader. I think that by adding it into this section, it doesn't create this loophole where people are just able to kind of skip out on meetings and stay home and ignore student government, because if it's an unexcused absence, it's still an unexcused absence. And if they're watching the Senate meeting from home, which is what's required for them to be proxying, then I don't think it's any easier than just coming to the Senate meeting. All in all, I think that this is a good amendment. I think that I like this bill, even though I'm kind of surprised that I do. But I think that allowing more discretion for different circumstances when we're in such an unpredictable span of people being able to come to things in person, I think that this is a good thing to keep in. I yield.
Senator Vate.
Right, so I was going to talk about why this amendment is a bad thing, but then I realized I was just going to bleed into why I think the whole bill would have unintended consequences and is counterproductive. So, as it stands right now, I do think the amendment reflects the intent of the bill's author, and I think as a body we should be looking at the bill as it was intended to be by the bill's author. So I'm going to be voting yes purely from that perspective. I understand that's not the best thing to do, but I'm going to yield.
Senator Mass.
Sort of answers. To sort of answer Senator Vate's point there, I think that's a very good thing for Rules Committee to do, is to make structural amendments. Now that we're back in the whole Senate, I think it's up to what all of us want within this bill. I worry that if we just make this door way too far open, then we have potential for senators to stay at home for any reason they choose and be less engaged in Senate. I would rather that senators do their jobs and be more engaged in Senate, be more actively participating in debate because they're here, unless they can't be here. And that's what our current language within the bylaws do. And even with this bill, if this bill were to pass without this amendment, it would continue to do that, because it says the only reason you can be distant is if it's a COVID-related reason. That's more broad than our current language, but it still restricts it to say, okay, you're quarantining or you're out of state and have to be out of state because of COVID or that sort of thing. And I think that's perfectly acceptable when we look at the bill as a whole. But I still want to limit the reasons why we're gone to COVID-specific reasons. If we wouldn't allow that sort of conduct in a non-COVID time, why are we making an exception to let them do it when it's not COVID related during COVID? So I'm voting no on the amendment.
I'm going to call to question in a second. Any objection to voting now? All right, then we'll do a placard vote. So please raise your placards up for yes, you would like this amendment. And then up for no. And then Stevens. And then up for abstentions. Yeah. Did someone not vote? All right. We'll do 18 to 11. This amendment passes. So we'll go back to Senator Simonson's opening statement.
Awesome. I don't have much to say other than I think the best outcome from this bill, if it passes, is that senators don't have to use absences, or excused or unexcused absences. We can achieve a better level of participation. And I don't expect that to be a problem. And if it is, there are remedies in the bill and Senate's general ability to change the bylaws so we can remedy those. But I don't foresee any problems with this. I hope the debate goes well. I yield.
All right. Senator Weathers.
I do appreciate the intent of this bill. When I wrote the proxy bill, I think it was restrictive, and I think quarantining is a bit restrictive, but I think this just opens the floodgates far too wide. I don't think we'll have another excused absence or an absence of any kind, because people can just show up now, or cannot show up for any reason whatsoever now. I don't think that that's the best solution to the problem that you're trying to fix. And the proxy system itself isn't a great system. Senator Mass said earlier that debate functions best when everybody's here. And due to COVID, that obviously can't happen. But we want to restrict that poor system to as few circumstances as possible. I yield.
Senator Vate.
Sweet. So I'm going to come to my thoughts on the bill as a whole. And I would like to start off by saying I do understand where Senator Simonson is coming from. And opening up Senate is a noble thing to do. However, we are a volunteer organization, and volunteer organizations, they function on people being present and being involved in what's actually going on. I think the fundamental misconception that this bill has is that showing up to a Senate meeting is the core responsibility of a senator. I'm going to say that is completely wrong. This is just the tip of the iceberg. When we were elected, we weren't elected to sit in a room and debate bills. We were elected to go out, work with campus administration, work with things on campus, and help make the campus experience better for everybody. You cannot do that if you are not going to be attending Senate meetings, because you are not going to be on campus, and then you cannot do any of that. Just yesterday, I was in a meeting with ICU Dining where we talked about the Give Us White program that helps food insecure students not be as food insecure. I'm currently scheduling a meeting with Chief Newton to set up the campus safety walk so we can go around, we can review campus facilities and make sure they're as safe as possible. And these are physical facilities, so you have to be physically present for all of this to happen. I could go on and on with examples. The campus accessibility review, which Cabinet put up, was another great example of projects that you have to be in person to do. That is why I'm fundamentally opposed to what this bill proposes. Secondly, we already have an established framework for excused absences and not excused absences. This bill just kind of rips the whole thing apart, and that's why I'm not terribly comfortable with it. All of the concerns I brought up in the rules minutes, which you can see there, also still stand. The last issue I have with the bill is the enforcement mechanism. And the way it works is the speaker, that is one single individual, has the power to decide whether or not you get a malfeasance or not. And I think that is incredibly, OP, because a malfeasance automatically triggers an investigation by Rules Committee. I think it also puts a lot of power into one individual's hand, and then we're going to break into factions. Some of us are going to be like, the speaker's right. Some of us are going to be like, oh my God, they're overstepping their authority. And I actually want to pose a question to Speaker Ludwig. What do you think about the powers that would be given to the speaker with such a bill?
I mean, I have concerns. Obviously, I don't want my perspective or opinion on any senator's request to be, affect the outcome. I don't want it to appear that I'm favoring anyone.
Mm-hmm.
I've, to this point, done my best not to do that. I actually have, I've only denied one request, and that was because they did not meet the 24-hour deadline.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, I would prefer not to be in a situation where I seem to be, taking a senator in or out of a meeting.
Mm-hmm. Right, and I agree. It's not right to put one individual up to that task. And that's why I'm not a big fan of the last part of this bill. And lastly, again, a malfeasance has resulted in an immediate investigation by Rules Committee, which I think is extra administrative overhead, which we really, again, like I said, our primary focus is to work on student initiatives, make the campus experience better, not investigate each other. And this bill just has a lot of framework issues and fundamental flaws I'm not comfortable with. I yield.
Senator Han Young.
I understand where the kind of fundamentals that Senator Vate was talking about come from. I think that the intent of this bill is good. However, the way that it's worded is just going to open up too many questions about Senate attendance and proxy attendance in the future. I do think that the speaker is a person who would act with judgment, with good judgment in these situations. However, I think that looking at like what ifs and factions is something we shouldn't even be discussing. We should be going back to our core purpose of being representatives. We're not a volunteer organization. We were elected for our position. I think that it's important that we have that mindset going in, that we have that responsibility. We don't need any sort of punitive measures for it. I think that the speaker is well equipped for that already. So I'll be voting no on this. I understand where it comes from. I seriously think that the proxy system is something that's evolving and needs to continue to improve, but I think that this misses the purpose. I yield.
Senator Klaptotowskis.
I just wanted to respond to Senator Vate's comments because I think during the COVID era, judging a senator on what they do on campus is pretty unfair. For UROC, all our constituent meetings are online. I sit on the Campus Town Board Association. Our meetings are online. Anytime a student has reached out to me for any off-campus matters, it's always been through email. The only thing I have involved on campus is Senate meetings present here. So I don't think it's fair to necessarily say you can't perform your job during this time period without being on campus. So with that, I yield.
Speaker Ludwig.
Yeah, so I have concerns generally about this bill and how it opens up the process. I think it's important to encourage senators to be here as much as possible, to be engaged in debate. When you're at home or wherever proxying, I think it's easier to not be engaged in debate, not be fully informed on what's exactly happening. And I think that's a disservice to your constituents. And so, we do as much as we can to make sure that people are here, and if they can't be, then they can proxy from home. But I don't want to open the doors for just anyone to proxy whenever they want. I think it's important that we're here. I think it's important that we're here to have the discussions that, we were all elected to have. That being said, I will likely be voting against this bill as a whole, but on the chance that it passes, I think there are some additional changes that we could make to the proxying process to make it more functional. So I'm going to make some amendments. First, the fourth to last enacted clause, I would, for 17.2.4.4.2, I would like to amend the sentence to read, should the proxying senator lose communication with the distant senator, the proxy must move to strike the distant senator from the roll. This is just simplifying the process for Vice President Schrader, as it is not always easy for him to know when the proxy obviously loses communication with the distant senator, and so it would be best if the proxy made that motion so that things were clear.
Okay, so that was a motion. There was a second. Is there any objection to consideration? Then we'll go into debate on it. The fourth to last enacted clause, I think the part that says automatically if the loses connection part. We can wait for it to be reflected on the screen.
Okay.
I think the comment on the screen is what the amended language would be changed to. So, I guess if your placard's up, that means you want to debate the amendment? Or, okay, so Senator Zastro.
I see where you're going with this, but I don't know if the motion is the right way to do it, because first of all, there are times when the motion wouldn't be in order. So if it's immediately you're supposed to do it after you lose communication, then that means that you are bound by the bylaws to make a motion which isn't in order. Secondly, related to that, because correct me if I'm wrong, but the motion to add a senator to the roll, Vice President Schrader, that motion would not be in order during somebody's closing statement. Is that correct?
I don't think so.
So you would be able to make that motion?
No, I don't think it would be in order during a closing statement.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well. And knowing that those can be, 3 to 5 minutes, if you lose communication with somebody and you have to make that motion, and then you wouldn't be able to add them back during that time when they actually would be able to vote, had they been on the roll. I don't think that this is the right solution, and I just think that them not voting is an indication that they've lost connection, and that can be communicated to Vice President Schrader after the meeting. Or Vice President Schrader, do you have a thought on that?
Yeah, I just don't understand how I'm supposed to automatically know who is connected at any time. Like, I just don't know a practical reason for that. If we have to wait till after the meeting, if someone has an abstention, like, it's going to get recorded as an abstention, which could affect the outcome of a vote. I can't wait till after the meeting to fix that, as well as just what if, it's not, like, are we just going to leave the voting period open until, like, we communicate that way? I think that this is just a better process, like an abstention can stand, just because I don't know how I'm automatically supposed to know who's connected to the internet or not.
All right, I think I have a better understanding of what the issue is, and I'm going to yield for now.
Senator Vate.
Yeah, so the way I'm thinking about it is, if I remember correctly, we can only make motions to remove someone from the roll when nobody else has the floor. And, well, I guess there is a small, before a call to question is made, there is a tiny window when you could make that motion, but all I'm saying is, like, somewhat share what Senator Zastro said. I also think this is more confusing because this is a really good amendment, but there's issues with the original bill. So I really think this is making the whole picture a little more blurry. And considering how much debate we're having already, I think it might just be best to talk about this in a separate bill with a couple members of the Rules Committee or what have you, and then bring it back to Senate next week. I don't think this is the most efficient way to deal with things right now. So I might just be voting no. Or yes, who knows? But probably no. I yield.
Speaker Ludwig.
Yeah, so I'd just like to echo a lot of what Vice President Schrader said about the difficulty that this presents to him. It is not, there's no way for the Vice President to know when you've lost connection, and so it is important that we lay that responsibility upon the proxying senator. And as for the ability to add them and bring them back in, you can make the motion when no one else holds the floor, and realistically there is a sort of, I guess in the specific example of a closing announcement, there is a sort of space of time between the closing announcement and when the vote actually begins that motion could still be made and would still be in order. So I'm not really too concerned about that. I think that there's still the flexibility to add and take the person from the roll. And I think generally that, although while I agree with Senator Vate that I don't agree with this bill as a whole, I think if we're going to be addressing the larger system of the proxy, that we might as well add this in and deal with it rather than bringing another bill. But anyways, I believe Vice President Schrader also has some additional comments.
Yes, I think that if I was to automatically add or delete people from the roll call, it could create a situation where senators don't know how many people are voting, which in a situation where a close vote happens and someone would like to move to reconsider or change their vote at the end, you need to know, a senator would have to keep track of the vote total as it's going on instead of at the end when I say the number and hit the gavel, the vote's over. So I think that's another scenario. I guess I could, if this amendment fails, I'll just plan on saying things out loud if it passes. But I don't really know if I have the actual ability to under Roberts, but I think that's another scenario where it could be a bit odd if I was just adding and deleting people without a verbal call from the Senate telling everyone about that.
So overall, I think this is a fairly straightforward amendment. I think it clears up some issues that we have and improves the access for proxying senators and the fluidity of that access. So I would encourage you all to vote for the amendment. I yield.
Senator Simonson? Okay. Senator Rinchie?
So if the challenge is, well, that's loud. So if the challenge is that your motion might not be in order, could it be solved by doing like a point of order, which doesn't need to be at a certain, like whether it's in bounds to say, and then if the point of order is made, then the vice president or the speaker just has the right to strike that person until a point of order is made that person has been back in communication.
Within a vote, nothing overrules a vote. Even a point of order, the vote carries on. So you could add in the bylaws to make an exception for that, but under Roberts as it stands now, a vote is a vote and nothing interrupts it.
So if that point of order is made before the vote is called, so that way it can just be put into discussion.
Yeah, you could just make the motion before then, too.
That's fair.
Yeah.
Awesome. Something to consider if someone sees a way to kind of meld that together. Yield.
Senator Weathers.
I just have a question for Speaker Ludwig. If the senator were to lose connection mid-vote, would the proxy then, what would they do in this scenario?
In that scenario, I believe the vice president usually gives some time and will double back to a person if they, if they miss the first round. Other than that, if they lose mid-vote, then the vote will just become an abstention. That's just an unfortunate result that, if we really wanted to get in the weeds of it, I guess we could maybe find a small, kind of complicated bylaw fix, but I think there's just going to be scenarios where things don't work out.
Okay, that's what I was looking for. Thank you.
Senator Vate.
Real quick, here's my revised position. I think this is a great amendment, which I always thought it was a good amendment, but it's on a bill that has issues. So let's quickly vote. Let's approve this amendment, and then let's talk about the bill as a whole, which I personally think should go ahead. But I yield. Everybody, let's just vote yes, get this done with.
All right, there's been a call to question the amendment. A second, any objection to voting? Great, then we'll do a placard vote. Call for unanimous consent on the amendment. Is there any objection? Then seeing none, this amendment has been approved by unanimous consent. Speaker Ludwig, the floor is back to you.
All right, so I'm going to make one other amendment to the proxy section. I'm going to add an amendment to, I'm going to move to add an ordered clause that reads, Student Government Bylaw 17.2.4.2 be amended to replace the phrase Speaker of the Senate with the Vice President.
So there has been a motion to add an ordered clause to amend bylaw 17.2.4.2 to replace Speaker of the Senate with Vice President. There was a second. Is there any objection to consideration of the amendment? Then seeing none, Speaker Ludwig, the floor is yours on the amendment.
Yeah, so this clears up just another problem that I've experienced in terms of giving access to the proxying senator. Sometimes I get the email late, and if for some reason I forget to or forward the email late to the vice president, who is the one who actually makes the roll for the meeting and has to keep track of who the proxying senator is, then there can be a mix-up in the beginning, and there's a chance that things might get confused. The vice president is the one who has to interact with this system the most. I can't remember exactly why the speaker was designated to the person to take the proxy request, and just overall it makes a lot more sense that the vice president deal with this overall, or deal with the whole proxy process, because there's really no reason that I specifically be involved. And then I believe Vice President Schrader has some comments.
Yes, I promise this will be the last time I talk. I just think this does nothing but reduce the amounts of emails, which reduces the chance of us messing it up on our end. So we make sure that I know we have the proxying set up so I know what to expect when we come into Senate. I don't think it has any practical effect beyond that. Thanks. So I'll yield to Speaker Ludwig's time. Senator Debate.
Good amendment, not so good bill. Let's get this through. Talk about the bill. Yield.
Senator Advait, I would like to remind you that you have to keep debate on the amendment. So when you talk on the amendment, you can't talk about the bill as a whole. Senator Weathers.
Is this creating an ordered class? Yeah, that was my issue.
I think that was the intent, right? Oh, he meant enacted.
Okay.
So, Senator Weathers, was that a friendly amendment proposed to Speaker Ludwig?
Yes, it was.
All right. I don't see an objection to that, so we'll just change that quick.
And my second question is, are you amending the second enacted clause or adding a new one entirely? Because the second enacted clause already deals with that, I believe.
So it does.
I would, if I can propose a friendly amendment, I don't know how to do this. If I can somehow move to make the second enacted clause reflect what your intentions were.
So is that a motion? Well, can I ask if you
intervene.
yield, let Speaker Ludwig withdraw his amendment, and then he can just propose it?
Okay, I yield.
Okay, yep, sorry about that. I looked for it but did not see it when I did a first sweep. So I will move to amend the second enacted clause to amend 17.2.4.2 to read the vice president must be notified by the proxies, etc.
Okay, so it's the same amendment, different spot. There's been a motion, a second. Any objection? All right, then we'll go into debate on it. Speaker Ludwig, do you want to?
Yeah, all the same reasons that I and Vice President Schrader mentioned before are why, this is just a straightforward amendment that I think clears up the process and makes it more functional. So,
right. Senator Zastro.
Motion to add Senator Hurley to the roll.
Is there any objection to adding Senator Hurley to the roll? Seeing none, Senator Hurley's been added.
Yeah, call the question.
There's been a call to question in a second. Any objection to voting? Then we'll do a placard vote. Call for unanimous consent. Any objection to approving the amendment by unanimous consent? Then seeing none, that amendment has been approved. Back to Speaker Ludwig.
okay, so, I think those two amendments, are good additions that go into the purpose of this bill. But as I stated before, I have significant problems with how much the language has been opened up here. I think it's important that we all try to be here, and that the reason, the only reason that people are proxying is because of something related to COVID-19. We added this section into the pandemic policies section because this was a way to make sure that senators could stay involved, a way for us to maintain quorum, and it's been doing that. As I stated before, I have not rejected a proxy request thus far. The system is working. The people who need it are using it. I don't think there's any reason to open up the process any more than it has been, especially in a way like this that I believe allows for senators in non-pandemic related situations to, abuse the system and not be as engaged with student government meetings and doing their job as senators. So I'm going to encourage you all to vote no on this bill. I understand the intent, and if maybe we want to come back with a more straightforward and less wide open fix, I'd be open to that. But at this moment, the way we've amended this bill has, in regards to distant and striking the COVID-19 references, I think it's just not functional. I yield.
And Senator Simonson, so as the author of the bill, your speaking privileges come at the beginning and at the very end, and you don't get any during the normal debate period. So people could yield to you if they were so inclined. Senator Zastro.
We are way earlier, Senator Advait mentioned that Senate meetings aren't the core responsibility of a senator. In response to that, if Senate meetings aren't the core responsibility of a senator, then I don't know what the problem is with missing a Senate meeting. Because this bylaw doesn't say that people can't meet with their constituents or work with their college or whatever. It's letting people who are in specific situations that us as a Senate don't know about if they exist currently and can't predict because we don't know the future. It lets people who are in those situations have a little more flexibility with their ability to still represent their constituents in this body. And I think that's a good thing to encourage. Another thing, being in person is always going to be better than being online, but we're just not able to always be in person right now due to the nature of the pandemic. I agree that being in person is going to add for a more fruitful discussion, but I still think that it would be better to allow people to go online if they're in a situation that we don't know about. One last thing. Before we pass the bill, can we get rid of the highlighting? That'll be a question to Senator Simonson. Cool. All right, so as a friendly amendment, can we get rid of all the highlighting on the bill?
Yeah, I think we can do that.
All right, thank you. And then I will yield the rest of my time to Senator Simonson.
Thank you very much. First thing to address, right now the speaker said he hasn't not allowed anybody to proxy, and that's awesome. I trust Speaker Ludwig. I don't know what the future brings. And I would honestly like to remove anybody from the equation to decide if somebody should be here or proxy, up to the individual senator. As the original bill states, the original proxy bill, and I think I kept it in this one, we were elected for our judgment. We all ran for election because we want to be here. I think we all agree that in person is so much better. I don't know of anybody in this room who wants to proxy because they don't want to be here. And if they do want to, they should probably just leave. I don't think that's an issue. We don't have people trying to get out of meetings. And there's this a huge lack of trust right now that I'm hearing, is if we let people proxy, then nobody's going to show up. I don't think that's a real fear. I genuinely trust everybody in this room to care and give effort. And I understand that that might scare some people, but that's the reality as it is right now. We can mail it in already. I can show up here and do nothing. I don't think that's an issue that this bill brings up. People can already not participate and still sit ass in seats. Our core purpose in Senate is to represent with our votes. We can't do that for a multitude of reasons if we shouldn't be at Senate. I don't want anybody who's ever worried that they're sick or going to get sick to come to Senate. If there's a weird family situation, financial situation, it's just simply none of our business. We are elected for our judgment. Let us use it. I'm getting a little emotional. I'm sorry about it. I want to say that the last line of the bill doesn't add any responsibility to the speaker. It just removes the question from ever coming up if the speaker has the ability to issue feasances. It's not adding any responsibility to the speaker. It's simply making sure that that question is never arises. The speaker cannot disallow somebody to proxy. What we can move, or the speaker can start a process to investigate if the senator is properly, executing their constitutional duties. And at the end, the end result of a feasances and feasances brings it to a Senate vote, a 2/3 vote to remove a senator. I don't think we'll ever get there, but if we are, that's all the feasances do. It's not a huge responsibility on the speaker because it doesn't remove us. There's no negative consequence from a feasance unless you get a bunch of them and then Senate votes to remove you, or you get censored by Rules Committee, which means little. So there's no added responsibility in that last line. And then right now, I don't think we're verifying if people are isolated or quarantined. I think it'd be weird if we were. So I think why pretend that we're doing that? That's all I have to say. Other than I think we all want to be here. I don't think there's any reason to think that there's not a senator in this room who doesn't want to be here. Thank you for the time, Senator Zastrow.
All right, Senator Springer.
Yeah, I just want to start by saying I think it's inappropriate to be talking about other senators in our group chat while we're talking about a bill. I think if you have something you want to say, you should say it into the microphone. About the bill, I think this has been in rules for 2 weeks, and I think everyone in rules appreciates what Senator Simonson is trying to do. He's trying to be more inclusive, and I think his intentions are really honorable. I don't think anyone's disagreeing with that. However, I share the concerns that a lot of people have brought up that it really broadens things. I don't know. I don't think the issue is a lack of trust. I think a main thing is that there's already a system in place where if people have a reason to not show up, there's absences. And I think, I don't know. I mean, I agree that if people didn't want to be here, they would not come here and they would not participate when they are here. But I think it's too broad, and I think Senator Simonson's intention would be better served if we made a simple bylaw amendment that adds like COVID-related absences. Like an example you gave was like having to go home to take care of like a sick relative. I think that maybe the bylaws don't include that issue now, and I think that that would just be a simple bylaw change rather than adding a bill that opens up a lot of ways that people can take advantage. So I yield.
Senator Pfeiffer?
Yeah, so I'd just like to say that, first of all, I agree with Senator Simonson. I don't think we should be investigating super closely as a Senate what the reasons are for people's absences. If it's something important, COVID related or financial related, or if they have to stay home for whatever reason, I don't think we should be worrying super finely about what exactly they're doing. If they can't make it, they can't make it. And I think it should be kind of broad, because then it allows for, like Senator Zastrow said, some unforeseen circumstance that maybe isn't strictly defined as COVID related as we would maybe state it in the bylaws, but is definitely a reasonable excuse to be gone for a meeting. And I think we should have the basic trust of one another that we all want to be here and we all want to participate as best as we can. And if somebody is gone, that they truly do need to be gone. And I'd rather have it be too broad and have to potentially change it back than limit people's ability to miss a meeting if they need to. And I think this is the correct course of action. And if it really does come down to it, that we're seeing half of Senate missing every meeting and they're all proxying in, then that's something we can address. But as it stands right now, I think that is not as critical of an issue as changing this would be. So with that, I yield.
Senator Rinchie.
A quick question for you, Senator Simonson. So we've heard people talk about, is this currently too broad? Can we make this a little bit more narrow? Would you say that it would be reasonable to add an amendment that says, in the first, a senator be distant from a Senate meeting for serious health or personal concerns? If we add that in there, do you think that this would be narrow it down enough, but still gives you the leeway to have a real reason, whether or not we need to investigate it?
And that was my original language in the bill, or very similar to that. But just the issue was, and the issue that was brought up in the Rules Committee, is that the responsibility to determine what counts and to allow that proxy is ended up left to one person, be that the Speaker or the Vice President, depending on if this bill passes. So I like that, but it's either unenforceable because whoever makes that decision has to put themselves in an uncomfortable position to disallow votes. It would even allow that person to influence votes by who they allow to proxy and who not. So if that's an amendment we propose, I think it's interesting to have the debate on it. But I do think that what that does is it introduces the potential for this to be, for proxy to be manipulated by one person, or for just to add too much responsibility to one person.
Could it go directly from the Speaker to like the Supreme Court or a body who's supposed to determine if things are just? Senator Mass, would you have a thought?
Okay, sorry.
No, the Senate determines its own operating rules and procedures. This is firmly within the Senate's purview for what the rules are. The Supreme Court has no judicial review over that.
Awesome. All right, then I will not propose the amendment. Thank you.
Senator Weathers.
I'm just going to say a final couple things on this, and then I'm going to call the question if nobody else has their placard up. But this bill was intended to be vague, and as it's written, the bill has nothing to do with COVID-19. I mean, I understand that the intention is for it to make it easier for COVID-19 people dealing with COVID-19 and the consequences thereof to be a part of student government. But as it stands right now, the bill has nothing to do with COVID-19. There's no COVID-19 language in there. It's just whoever wants to not show up cannot show up. And I understand we should have faith in our senators. And I would like to think that every senator would be the ideal senator. But if that were truly the case, then we wouldn't have the need for the majority of the rules that we have in Senate. Yeah, I yield and I call the question, actually.
I'm going to call the question in a second. Is there any objection to voting on the bill? And seeing none, I'll go to Senator Simonson with a closing statement.
It's a good debate. I appreciate your effort on this. I don't think that this will be a catastrophic thing. I think it will change nothing as to how these meetings operate. It will just simply allow the people who currently have been utilizing proxies and who can utilize them in the future, use them without having to bring a note to the teacher from the doctor, because we're adults here. That's the intent of this. I think the bill reflects that. That's it.
Okay. So please say yes, no, or abstain when I call your name on this roll call vote. Adegarla. Edvate. Anderson. Brown. Emery. Bahim. Grant. Goff. Gonzalez. Anyang. Hayes. Hovey. Early. Kloptowskis. Lewis. Lona. Ludwig. Mass. Pfeiffer. Rinchi. Samano. Schulte. Sorry, what was that? Yes. Simonson. Springer. Stenzel. Stevens. Samuel. Weathers. Young. Zastro. Savosky. With a vote of 21 to 10, this bill clears the 2/3 of present senators' vote by 1 and passes. We will now move on to the next bill, 2020-2-022Y, Election Reform Act, and that is a Rules Committee bill, so I'll go to Speaker Ludwig.
Okay, first I'm going to move to recommend the Rules Committee amendments.
Okay, so the Rules Committee amendments have been proposed. Speaker Ludwig.
Yeah, so these are just a series of amendments that kind of, add in some additional clauses that clarify certain sections, deal with some of the concerns that were brought by members of Rules Committee and the Election Commission. One of the, larger sections is a procedure for election violation hearings. This one just generally lays out the process more in depth. Overall, I think all these amendments are pretty straightforward and good additions. Senator Mass was the chair of the election subcommittee, so he can always answer questions, and most of us on rules can. But if you have any questions, please ask. I yield.
I'm going to call a question on the amendments. And a second, is there any objection to voting? Then we'll do a placard vote. Call for unanimous consent on the rules amendments. Is there any objection? Okay, so then the Rules Committee amendments have been approved by unanimous consent. Speaker Ludwig, back to you on your opening statement.
All right, so this is the Election Reform Act. 2 months later, a lot of different meetings and a lot of research. This process was spearheaded by Senator Mass on the Election Reform Subcommittee with Senator Weathers and Senator Advait. They did a lot of really good work here, went out and looked to a lot of different systems. I think that this bill solves a lot of the problems and concerns that not only internal members of student government expressed, but former candidates and stuff like that. This adds an adversarial process. It solidifies the election code as a permanent document that can be amended by an act of Senate. It clears up a lot of different little holes and problems that were noticed in the section. The Election Reform Subcommittee over the past 2 months has looked to models from around the country. Senator Mass has been in contact with the Election Commission. We had a joint meeting with the Election Commission. We made compromises on, what we were going to add in, what we were going to pull out. I don't think everyone got everything they wanted, but I think that this bill represents a lot of compromise and a lot of good, well thought out policy. I encourage good discussion on this. This is a pretty complex topic. If you have questions, please ask them. Senator Mass, as I've said before, has dealt pretty hands-on with this, so he has answers. I can also answer questions, and any of the members of Rules Committee will most likely have good answers for you if you have them, or if you have questions. So, yeah, I open it up for debate. I yield.
Senator Mass.
Yep. I thank Speaker Ludwig for that. As he mentioned, this has put a lot of work into it. This was originally an idea that was sort of developing in people's brains way back end of last fall semester. But just at the time was just really an idea that we weren't sure if we were going to go anywhere with. After last election season, it started to become more concrete. It was talked about a lot over the summer. And then over this Senate session, we've been able to finally come together. So we have a couple different amendments. Obviously, there were a ton of Rules Committee amendments that got proposed within the last couple weeks, but we have some more. I met with Commissioner Rizvik last night, and she had some additional concerns that she wanted to be addressed, so I'm going to start walking through some of those amendments. First, I will move to amend the 5th enacted clause to insert 13.2.11.6. A case involving a ticket for president and vice president may be pursued against only one of the candidates if the evidence suggests that the other had no knowledge of the alleged wrongdoing.
Okay, so there's been a motion to add in which enacted clause? The 5th one?
The 5th one.
The 5th one, to separate out the culpability of the slates. And there was a second. Is there any objection to consideration? Then we'll go into debate on it. Senator Mass.
So this is a line within the current bylaws. We took the original whole section that had to do with policies and procedures related to violation hearings and moved them to a new section. In doing so, this didn't make it along with the rest. I think it's a fairly common sense thing. So I would encourage everyone to vote yes on it. I'm going to call the question.
All right, there's been a call to question and a second. Is there any objection to voting? And we'll do a placard vote. It's called for unanimous consent. Is there any objection to approving this amendment by unanimous consent? Then seeing none, the amendment has been approved. Senator Mass.
All right, next I'm going to move to amend the 6th enacted clause, or no, the 5th enacted clause, my apologies, to insert 13.2.11.7. The prosecutor or commission must inform the defendant of their rights before questioning.
Okay, there's been a motion to amend the 5th enacted clause again. To add a 13.2.11.7. I heard a second. Is there any objection to consideration? All right, then we'll go back to Senator Mass.
This further concretes people's rights. This is kind of reminiscent of Miranda rights, if you're familiar with those. Just to make sure that before someone shows up either at a hearing or is questioned before the prosecutor in their case, it's just like, hey, just so you know, you don't have to tell me anything if you don't want to. If you want someone to represent you, you can do that, those sort of things. So I'm going to call the question on this one as well.
Second.
Going to call to question and a second. And there's going to call for unanimous consent. Is there any objection to approving the amendment by unanimous consent? All right, then seeing none, it's been approved. Senator Mass.
All right, so we're going to move on to the next one then. So this bill does a lot of different things. Among them, we do a couple different cleaning up sections just to make the bylaws read better. We make some changes to allow for virtual collection of signatures, which especially during this time of COVID is going to be incredibly important. But definitely the largest portion of this bill is we wanted to introduce an adversarial process, so we have an attorney general investigating rather than the commission themselves. This makes the commission a more independent, neutral, third-party judge. So as a part of that, it was suggested by the Election Commission. Originally, the Rules Committee had suggested that this be an appointed position by the President and then this be confirmed by the Senate. The Election Commission felt very strongly that it would be even better if we make that nominating process even more nonpartisan. So we came up with the idea of a nonpartisan nominating commission. So I'm going to move to amend the 10th enacted clause to insert the language sent to the Vice Speaker.
All right, so I'll just wait till that language is on the screen, and then you can make the amendment there, so folks know if they can object to it or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, go ahead.
Is it on this email or is it on the other one?
It's number 4 on that email.
It's on the what?
Well, this is.
Oh, okay. Will it be before and it be it further?
It would be a new enacted clause.
Wait, can you say that again? I'm sorry.
So it would amend after the 10th enacted clause to insert enacted that 9.8.4.1, an independent nominating commission composed of justice of the Supreme Court, etc., be inserted.
So if I tab here.
Yep.
And then enacted. Yeah? Does that look good?
Yep.
Okay.
All right, so there's been an amendment to propose what is highlighted on the screen, and there was a second. So is there any objection to consideration of it? All right, seeing no objection, we'll go into debate on the amendment. Senator Mass.
So like I said earlier, basically what this would do, this is kind of modeled after the way the Iowa judicial nominating commissions work for judges within the state. So what it would do is we would create an independent nominating commission composed of 1 justice of the Supreme Court, 1 member of the Election Commission, an appointee of the President, and a member of the Rules Committee of the Senate to be selected by those bodies. And they are going to meet and they're going to nominate 3 people that they think are qualified. The President gets to choose one of those 3 to be sent to the Senate for confirmation. What the benefit is of this way, it removes any potential conflict of interest from the President solely getting to choose whoever they want. There are pros and cons to this. I brought this to the Rules Committee. The Rules Committee felt that it would add unnecessary process where it wasn't necessarily needed. The benefit is going to be that the President is going to get less choice, but on the other hand, it may be able to ensure that the Attorney General is a less biased choice. My personal opinion is I'm not sure that it is needed because, just as a matter of fact, we as a Senate get to check and make sure that it's not a biased nominee when we confirm them. But I do think if you're looking to remove any sense of bias at all, this is not a bad change to make. So I'm going to go ahead and yield for debate on that.
Senator Weathers.
Yeah, Senator Mass and I talked pretty extensively about this. Senator Adbate as well on the Election Reform Committee. I am strongly opposed to this amendment. Rules also fell, in addition to the unnecessarily complicated aspect of the amendment, that it wouldn't actually remove any bias. the proposed commission would be made up of a Supreme Court justice and a member of election commission. And I don't think you would necessarily want either of those two people determining who will prosecute cases before them. That's bias in and of itself. Senator Massey brought it up earlier that the Senate does confirm the nominations either way. So if we had concerns of bias without this commission, then we could stop it there. That's our job to do so. That's our job when a member of the Supreme Court justice is up for nomination. We don't have doubts about our ability to do it then. Why would we have doubts about our ability to do it now? I yield.
Senator Zastro.
So I just joined the Rules Committee last week. So I got to hear just kind of the very tail end of these discussions. And from somebody who hadn't seen a lot about the Attorney General position and so forth before last week, I think that the Attorney General is a good position. But considering that even one of the concerns that Election Commission brought up is that the Attorney General might not be able to be appointed fast enough, Rules Committee is a body that's going to take a bit to get started at the beginning of any Senate session. Same for Election Commission, same for the Supreme Court, just to get started meeting at the beginning of the semester. Having all these bodies, making it so that all these bodies need to assemble before this subcommittee is able to make a choice, which is then referred to the president to choose from one of three, which is then sent to the Senate to confirm. It's a very lengthy process, and if speed is an issue that's already a concern from Election Commission, I don't think that adding this is worth it. So I would consider a vote against this amendment. I yield.
Speaker Ludwig.
Yeah, so I'm going to agree with a lot of what's been said so far by Senator Zastrow, Weather, and Mass. I don't believe that this amendment adds much value to the bill as a whole or to the selection process of the Attorney General. Concerns about bias are legitimate. I understand that. But as we've talked about before, there is the job of the Senate to review the candidates and make a decision about whether or not they are qualified for the role and whether or not they are going to do their job in the way it was intended. And it is, and beyond that, there's the Election Commission and the Supreme Court who are there to make sure that, the cases being brought to them are decided fairly and decided justly. I think we can still trust them to do that in this process. I don't think that there's any reason to have this extra layer of, filtering for this specific member. We don't do this for any other position in student government. I don't see any reason for this specific position to have that requirement. I think that there are already enough parts of this process, of this system, that allow us to check these individuals and make sure that they are qualified for their role and are going to do it well. And there are enough checks in our system for conduct that will make sure that people involved in the process get a fair trial, get a fair shake. I don't believe this is a necessary amendment, and I'm going to recommend to you all that you vote no. I yield.
Senator Dvait.
Right. Most of what I was going to say has been said already, and I completely agree with all the sentiments that have been expressed. I understand where Election Commission is coming from, but as I believe Senator Weather said, we don't do this for judges. It's our job as Senate to scrutinize all appointments and make sure that nothing fishy is going on. And number two, as Speaker Ludwig said, we do have a good checking system. Checks and balances in place. And just to add to everything they said, we also have a ledger that the Attorney General has to maintain of all the cases that they are choosing not to prosecute. One of the concerns I heard from Election Commission was that if the president nominates a friend, that friend as Attorney General could simply choose not to pursue charges against the president, but they will have to keep an open, easily accessible record of all the charges they are not prosecuting. And as a Senate, it's our job to look at that and see if anything fishy is going on. If something is going on, well, impeachment's always an option. But like I've said before, trust is important, and it's also our job to scrutinize. I think this is just adding an extra step to the process. I'm going to agree with everybody else and say we need to vote this amendment down. I yield.
Going to call to question on the amendment. There's been a second. Is there any objection to consideration or to voting on it now? And seeing no objection, we'll do a placard vote. All right, so we're going to do a placard vote. Please put your placards in the air for yes, you would like this amendment. And then up for no. All right, and then abstentions. And Stevens. All right, so with a vote of 1 to 30, this amendment fails. Senator Mass, back to you.
Next, I will move to strike the first enacted, or amend the first enacted clause to strike 12.91 and 12.92.
So there's been a motion to amend the first enacted clause to strike 12.91 and 12.92. And there's a second? Is there any objection to consideration? And Senator Mass, I'll go to you.
Yes. So 12.91 and 12.92 slightly changes the process for how exactly election violations work. Under the current system, Election Commission is in charge of hearing all election violations. They hear the evidence, they listen to any witnesses, and then they decide on guilt or innocence in that process. There's an added wrinkle, though, that under our current bylaws, what also happens is if it was a case serious enough to merit disqualification and barring from future elections, then an automatic appeal is filed with the Supreme Court. I think the intention behind that bylaw is that the Supreme Court, being the highest judicial body within our government, is going to be able to come up with the best, most final decision when we get to a serious enough case such as that. When we looked at that, we kind of found it wonky that you are requiring someone to appeal. So what we as a subcommittee thought would be better is if instead, what if for those sort of very serious cases, we're going to make it so that the Election Commission sits as a grand jury. A grand jury, at least legally, is basically a body that gets together to determine is there enough evidence for us to have a trial or not. They don't determine guilt. They just say, is the evidence serious enough to have a trial, given that a trial is going to be such a big deal in this case, and the ramifications are so large. So we felt that that may be a good avenue to go down. 12.91 and 12.92 explain how that process would work. You would have a grand jury for those sort of cases, but for every other sort of case, Election Commission just decides, and then if you want to appeal to the Supreme Court, you can. It's still a process. It's still a weird process. Our current bylaws are a weird process. We thought that this is maybe a better avenue to go down than our current bylaws. There are concerns, as I'm sure many of you have read within the Election Commission's report that they sent out to all of you, that this creates some sort of presumption of guilt by having them decide a case like this. I don't personally read it this way. I don't see it that way because that's not the way grand juries are supposed to work. But I also understand that concern, so I wanted to make that amendment on their behalf tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and yield to debate.
Senator Advait.
I know Election Commissioner Rishvik had some very strong thoughts about this particular part of the bill, so I want to pose a question to her and ask her what she wants to say on the issue. Unless she doesn't want to say anything.
Someone close to Emily could get her mic. Yeah, thanks, Senator Samuel.
What's the question?
The question is, I believe you had very strong opinions on the bill, and I think the body should hear those.
Yes, so as I previously mentioned and in the memo, we just feel like this imposes a penalty prior to having the violation hearing. We don't discuss penalties unless we decide that there is a violation, and so we want to keep that process, because when you're deciding penalties before even knowing that there's a violation, it's just not a good look. And so that's why we're not really in support of this. I think it also overcomplicates the process. We would also have to go through our code and kind of categorize all of these different campaigning violations or other violations, so that way you know ahead, well, if this is a violation, it's just going to go straight to the Supreme Court. But again, I don't want Election Commission to be discussing penalties prior to even knowing whether a violation has occurred.
Thank you for that. I understand what you said about having to change the code. I'm just curious about what you mean by the penalties being applied, because my understanding is that the Election Commission just examines the case and no penalties are applied unless it goes to the Supreme Court, and then the Supreme Court makes a decision that is adverse to the campaign's case.
Could you clarify? Because the process that's outlined in the bylaws is that we decide whether there is a violation. If there is a violation, then a penalty is voted on in Election Commission.
Right, that is the process in the old bylaws. This bill will be changing that process for everything that is over $200 or involves nullification.
I'm not understanding what your question
So there
is.
wouldn't be any assumption of guilt unless the court hears your case and then makes a decision on the case, as long as it's over $200 and nullification is involved. So there is no penalty.
I think the presumption of guilt is deciding, well, we have to have a grand jury because we think that this is going to have a penalty. Do you see that connect there?
I'm not really sure what you're coming to. The purpose of a grand jury is to look at the facts on the ground and recommend to a court whether or not it warrants. Oh, Senator Zastro? Zastro, yeah.
Yeah, so, correct me if I'm wrong, but the point is you wouldn't be able to know whether or not one of these three punishments was the case unless they had already decided to some degree that it is of that severity.
Yeah, Commissioner Risvik.
Also, I do want to note that while we do have an Appendix A for all those penalties, right? Those aren't concrete penalties. There are alternative remedies to fit certain unique situations, and in the code as it is right now, we decide things on a case-by-case basis. So if there is a unique circumstance, like there was a miscommunication, and that gets brought up in that violation hearing, we would understand, hey, maybe the penalty that is suggested by Appendix A isn't warranted, that something else, like a warning or an alternative remedy, would be more fitting.
So your concern is that this takes away the power of Election Commission to recommend, to assess violations?
No, it's still the concern that you're deciding the penalty before even deciding whether a violation has occurred. We're more focused on the process of deciding, well, hey, was there a violation that was occurred? You don't discuss the penalties prior to the violation.
Okay, I think I understand your concerns now, and I think the core, if I may, I think the core problem here is that we're having the Election Commission act as a court, so perhaps it might just be easier to send everything to the court. I don't know. Yeah, Senator Weathers.
Yeah, the Election Commission.
Senator Weathers, you have 13 seconds left on Senator Vade's speaking privilege.
I'm going to yield.
Great. We'll go to Speaker Ludwig.
I'm going to pose a question to Senator Mass. In writing this section, did you intend rather for it to be violations that have a suggested or cap like amount or punishment at the $200 or nullification? Was that your intention?
Yes.
Okay. I'll pose a question to Election Commissioner Risvik. If we amended the line to simply state for violations that have the potential to, reach that cap or nullification, have to go through that process, would that help clear up some of the concerns that you have? Because I think the intent here was just for violations that could meet that threshold, that the suggested is 200 or something like that. If we amended it to clarify that, would that help?
Yeah, I just don't want to discuss. I don't think that Election Commission should really be discussing penalties without understanding the violation case before. Does that
Okay.
make sense? I don't think that before even knowing whether a respondent is guilty or innocent, that penalties should even be discussed. I don't
Right.
think that it,
Yeah, so.
I feel like the procedure isn't really straight when you're doing that, and then you're having election commission when you're having this like situation where election commission has to understand whether or not this is going to be a high penalty, and we're talking about it in the backgrounds, which I think is kind of not good to have too, because then you're talking about the case behind you're talking about the case prior to even having the violation, just to understand whether or not it needs to go to the Supreme Court. I think the way that we have it right now, I think is good. Just because if there is a situation like that, which doesn't arise, it's pretty rare to have that happen. I think the situation, having it just automatically appealed would be good, because we could organize that appeal so that way because we would automatically do it, you know?
Okay, so yeah, here's the thoughts that I have on this. I believe that I understand where the election commissioner is coming from, but when it comes to discussing the fines, I don't think that the election commission in this scenario or under this bylaw actually has to discuss fines or talk about what they think the fine should be. I think the effect of this is that it categorizes the violations into two categories. Violations that have a cap fine amount under this value would automatically go to the election commission, and the violations that could potentially have an effect above this would be instead go to this grand jury process and then go to the Supreme Court. So the effect of this isn't that the election commission has to decide guilt or decide a fine ahead of time. It merely has the effect of categorizing the different types of cases, which I believe is beneficial, in the effect that for larger fines of $200, especially if it's a privately funded campaign or a Senate campaign, or nullification, I think it is better to have the immediate final answer from the Supreme Court, rather than in the middle of the campaign cycle, and then you have to go through a whole appeals process that could take upwards of a week or two. I think this helps deal with those larger issues, get a final answer much quicker, that's more definitive. So yeah, I guess I don't share the concerns of the Election Commission. I think the effect is different than how they're interpreting the line, and so I would prefer to keep it in the bill. I yield.
Senator Zastro.
I agree with Election Commissioner Rizvik. I've come to understand the issue here, because for where Speaker Ludwig was saying that this essentially creates two classes of penalties, where it's anything where the maximum is one of those three criteria and anything that isn't, we will never be able to create an exhaustive list of everything that could go wrong. I mean, say that like a Senate candidate just like punched somebody in the library. I mean, of course there would be some kind of fine for that. We don't know what that is. It'd probably be some kind of misconduct. But because we can't see every possible thing, we can't say, because there isn't an exhaustive list of this action has this maximum penalty, this action has this maximum penalty. We could never create that list, and we certainly don't have one now. So if we were to, so that does create some kind of normative judgment where Election Commission has to say, would this be one of those three things? And that judgment is the problem, because they have to say before they even know whether or not, before it's even evaluated whether or not that allegation is true, they have to say whether or not the punishment, what level the punishment would be. And they don't want to have that. So I think it is a good thing to take this out. I would like for, and I'll direct this as a question to Senator Mass, would it be possible to say that Election Commission hears those cases And then if the punishment that they decide on is one of those three things, it's automatically appealed to the Supreme Court.
It would be possible to do that. That's basically tantamount to the existing bylaws, if that makes sense.
So if these two lines were struck, that essentially would be the process?
Yes.
All right, so I think that is how we should go ahead, because also if it is something that's this serious, I mean, it's barring them from holding this office, or it's a serious financial penalty that, you know, student government's great, but this is real world money. Like that might be somebody's rent money that you're taking away. I think it would be better if it's heard by multiple bodies, and not just be a grand jury of this is possible. So I would really encourage a vote yes on this amendment. And I do think that this is something that we all should be taking really seriously. I yield.
Great. There is 1 minute and 45 seconds left on debate for the amendment. Senator Mass.
Sure. So this is not a portion of the bill that I am hugely attached to in either direction. This was simply us looking at a process and saying, is there a way that this could work better? I do think, so the intent was we have an appendix with a list of here are the penalties for everything. And if something fits under one of these violations of election law, at least a penalty within a range or something along those lines. So the intent would be you look at that, you find out what the possible penalty is for the alleged violation, and then that determines whether or not where the case goes. It's not talking about what is the definite penalty. It's about we're just trying to split up all the possible election violations because they are, in a way, kind of all ennumbered within election code. Because if you do something that's not covered by election code, it's not a violation. So that was the intent. I do think if we want to strike these bylaws, that's perfectly acceptable and we have a process that works. This was just an attempt to try and maybe make the process more streamlined and more workable and maybe more understandable. So with that, I'll yield.
Senator Advait.
Out of time, I just agree with Senator Zastro. Let's strike this and then make another amendment to reflect what Senator Zastro said. I think that's the best way forward as well, so I'll be voting yes.
All right, there's been a call to question. Is there a second? Great. Is there any objection? Doesn't matter, we hit the time. So we're gonna go into a vote. Let's do a placard vote. So please place your placards up for yes, you would like this amendment to strike the two lines out of the bill. Okay, and up for no? And then up for abstentions. And then Stevens. Okay, so with a vote of 25 to 4 to 2, this amendment passes. Senator Mass, the floor is still yours.
So yeah, this wraps up the amendments that I had to propose tonight. So overall, I've talked about this a little bit obviously earlier in the Senate session about why I thought there was a need for this. And at the core, I think it's always good to be critical of our existing process and look back at it. But I think that the changes that we have made are good ones. I think if we do anything in this bill on its own, I think the adversarial process is most worth it. Just because it's very important that as we're going through this process, we should have the people who are investigating and prosecuting, who are probably be completely certain about the guilt of the person they're prosecuting before the trial even begins, be separate than the people who are in charge of judging the violation hearing. Election Commission does that in a way right now where the commissioner and the vice commissioner are in charge of investigating and then don't get a vote during the actual hearing that they hold. But I think it is much better, and I think especially for candidates who really want fairness of the process, to know that the people investigating are completely not a part of the Election Commission. That's the role of this Attorney General that we're creating. Additionally, we've given the Attorney General other responsibilities outside of election season, since election season is only a couple months out of the year. The goal would be that during the rest of the year, they're also in charge of compliance of other student government laws. They're in charge of looking around, making sure that we're following our own bylaws, that our bylaws are in line with the Constitution, and to make sure that us as senators and members of the executive branch are following what we're supposed to do under those bylaws. So they'd be the ones that would be in charge of helping to make sure that we're following our own rules. In addition to that, they'd help with finance policies and procedures. We have a finance violations procedure right now that they would be able to then take part of and work closely with the finance director. And I do think, like I said, there are numerous other different clearing up sections that we're able to do. We listened and took Election Commission's comments and concerns into serious consideration throughout all of this. We had our joint meeting with the Rules Committee. I've had many phone calls with Emily trying to address a lot of the things she had questions about. And I hope that all of you will vote yes. I would love to hear any questions from you as we keep going through this process. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and yield.
Senator Advait.
Senator Mass, is it automatic that an appeal is made to the court in the present bylaws, or would there have to be new language to do that?
That is automatic within the current bylaws.
And is that for everything, or is that just for?
It is for anything that merits a disqualification of contest or barring from future elections.
Okay. In that case, I'm going to make an amendment to add in 12.9.1 as it was, except to switch out the part after $200 to say there shall be an automatic appeal to bring a case before the Supreme Court. This is the amendment that Senators Astro and I were talking about. I need a second, folks. Thank you.
All right, so there's been a motion and a second. We'll just wait for the change to get reflected on the screen. Or
repeat.
Point of information, can you comment that? Will you type that as a
I do
comment?
not have, wait, I might, nope, I do not
So
have.
even if you are a viewer, you can still
Oh, fantastic.
comment.
Okay, let me get back to the original bill. Sorry, I'm looking at two versions of the bill because I had to, oh, there we go. I don't think it's letting me make a comment.
So right here, it'll pop up on the side.
Yeah, it's not popping up to the right like it usually does. Unless
Speaker Ludwig.
I think it might just be quicker if Senator Advait could send the language to
Or, sure,
Vice
that
Speaker
works too.
Gonzalez.
That's gonna take a minute. I appreciate everybody's patience. I'm sorry about this. Okay. All right, it should be in your inbox, Vice Speaker
Okay,
Gonzalez.
All right, never mind.
All right. If I don't recall if objections have been asked for, but if they have, I'm going to.
the language is still not reflected on the screen.
Oh, that is
So
unfortunate.
where would you like it to be deleted, and what would you like to be added in its place?
12.9.1. The old 12.9.1.
That's what's on the screen.
Sunglasses don't help. Yep, that is correct.
All right, that's the amendment you wanted?
Yep.
Okay, so then we have an amendment proposed. There was a second. Is there any objection to consideration? Seeing none, we'll go into debate on it. Senator Advait.
Right, so this is the amendment that Senator Zastro and I talked about earlier. All it means is if you are assessed a penalty greater than $200, or if the penalty is nullification, or you being barred from future elections, there will automatically be an appeal to the Supreme Court. So you can have judicial redress And like Senator Zastro said, this is real money. We could be taking away someone's rent money, and having that automatic appeal lowers the barrier of entry for students who might be accused of, or who have had an adverse judgment against them by the Election Commission, because it is acting as a court at this point. So I'm going to yield for discussion.
Senator Zastro.
This will be a question to Senator Mass. Is there currently an enforcement mechanism? Because it says automatically, but I mean, like, nothing automatically happens. Is it like the Attorney General who's supposed to be sending it?
So my understanding is under the current process, the Election Commission just forwards everything they have to the Supreme Court. If it were a case like this, I'd imagine we'd do the same thing or have the attorney. I think that's something that can be worked out with that language.
All right, call the question.
Second.
Going to call to question in a second. Is there any objection to the vote? There's been an objection to the vote. So, do you withdraw your call to question? Okay.
Yeah, I just had a question for.
Sorry, Senator Hayes. I don't think Senator Zastro yielded yet.
I yield, yeah.
Okay, so now the floor is open. Senator Hayes.
Yeah, just for Senator Advader, for Senator Zastro, could you just clarify or explain like what the problem with like the accused being able to appeal for themselves would be, or why that would be automatic?
Right. So so right now the bylaws already have an automatic appeal if I believe the penalty is nullification or greater. All this does, I believe, is it reduces the barrier of entry. So ideally, the way I'm thinking about this is most people that will be in this situation will be brand new to student government. They're not going to be too familiar with the way our bylaws work. They're not going to be familiar with the appeals process. And honestly, I don't think we should be expecting them to have to pour through pages and pages of bylaws to figure out what exactly they should be doing. This just reduces the barrier of entry. They're still going to have to go into court. I think it's just good to give people that sort of redress, especially if it's over $200, that's a significant monetary amount. If you're getting disqualified or being barred from future elections, I think that's a pretty significant penalty as well. So just smooths the process a little bit. Does
Okay.
that answer your question?
Yes, but just to clarify, like someone who would be like knowledgeable of those bylaws would be able to appeal for themselves if it weren't to be automatic already. Like, say that this amendment didn't exist, they would already be able to appeal for themselves, or this amendment, I mean.
So all this amendment really does is adds an automatic appeal for cases. So as it is with the current bylaws, if I understand it correctly, if it's nullification or greater, you're going to have an automatic appeal anyway. This amendment expands those protections to all penalties that have a monetary value greater than $200.
Okay, yeah, that definitely, yeah, that clarifies it. Thank you.
All right, sweet. Did you have? Oh, no.
Going to call to question on the amendment. There's been a second. Is there any objection to voting? Okay, then we'll do a placard vote. So, call for unanimous consent. Is there any objection by approving the amendment by unanimous consent? All right, so that amendment has been approved. And we'll go back. I think that's Senator Advait's speaking privilege still.
Right, I guess we're on the bill as a whole, and just wanted to say the biggest thing this bill does is add an adversarial process, and I think that's in there. I think that's beautiful. It makes it so the people that are accusing you of breaking the law, i.e. Election Commission, are not the same people that are determining guilt, which is the way the process is worked right now. And if you think about it, even if I believe someone has violated election law, and if I'm also told to be the judge in that case, obviously I'm going to think they violated law because, it was my idea that they violated it. So this just adds another person into the process who's going to be a neutral arbiter, sort of, and I think that's beautiful. The bill's great. Please vote yes. I yield.
Senator Zastro.
First of all, as a point of information on one of the enacted clauses that was previously amended, this one here, can you guys see if I'm highlighting that? Yeah. There's some language in here. I think this that I'm highlighting right now is part of the email that Mass sent and was not intended to be part of the amendment that was added. Could that be a friendly amendment to remove that, Senator Mass? Okay, I'm just going to delete that.
All right.
Thank you. And then also, as a question to, I'll direct this to Senator Mass. What was the rationale behind the Senate not seeing election code every year?
So the rationale there was that rather than passing a 30-page long election code every year that only changes in a couple areas, we're instead seeing a bill that addresses amendments to that code. So the idea, rather than focusing on, we've got a giant code that's been proposed by Election Commission, and we have to move to strike things we don't like that may have gotten changed. Instead, the election code just exists, and when Election Commission needs to make a change to it, they send it to us. And once we have it, we review that change on its own, rather than an entire long document that includes a lot of different changes.
Do you think that Senate is missing out on something by not kind of having the positive opportunity to see it, all of it in front of them at some point, and being able to evaluate it and change it?
I believe that it would get treated more similar to the bylaws then, where it's an existing document that you're going to be able to see right in front of you and see the impacts that the bill is going to make on that document. But I don't think it necessarily hurts Senate by not being able to see the entire bill at once. Having gone through election code passage, it's usually a really long, drawn-out discussion because everyone has their one thing that they care very strongly about, and they add up to 20 things. So in my mind, it would be better if we look at it and we say, okay, here's one big change, let's discuss this as a big thing, rather than let's discuss 20 things and everyone can pick out their one thing that they care a lot about and make an amendment. Because then we get into amendments and amendment to amendments, and it gets to be a big, complicated mess.
Sure, yeah. I just wanted to address that. That's something that I was kind of on the fence on. Thinking about, I have more experience with PNC, and that's a document that Senate sees every year, and I think that's really valuable that it's seen every year by Senate. So do you think it would be a good idea to task Rules Committee with reviewing the election code every year? Or is that something that Election Commission already does? Election Commissioner Civic? Okay, all right. And is it in the bylaws, Senator Mass, that Election Commission and Rules Committee have a joint meeting?
It is not currently in the bylaws.
Okay.
To do that.
I don't think that's relevant to the intent of this bill, so I won't make an amendment, but maybe that's something that we could think of in the future. I don't see any other placards up, so I will call to question on the bill.
It's been a call to question on the bill as a whole, and there was a second. Is there any objection to voting on the bill? There's been an objection. Senator Zastrow, do you withdraw or not?
Sure, yes. And then I still have the floor, right?
Correct.
Senator Advait, what's up?
Right. I just got an email from Commissioner Risvik, and I did address their concerns, but I believe the crux of the matter is currently the bylaws say that the guilty party shall be notified within 24 hours in writing of the violation and the procedure for appealing the decision. I believe that the new language in this bill does give them that 24-hour notification, but does not tell them what the procedure is. I think that's the concern they have, and I'd like to make an amendment to add a procedure if that is indeed what the Election Commission wants, so the body can consider it.
I'm going to yield.
Mm-hmm.
Senator Advait.
Not move me down. I'm going to pose a question to Senator Mass.
Thank you. I don't get speaking privilege.
Yep, I forgot. I'm sorry.
All right. I believe the section in question is now in place in 13.2.11. That's at the top of the second page. It spells out procedures for violation hearings.
Right. I believe the concern brought up is that while the 24-hour notification has been carried over, the language telling the accused party what the procedure of recourse is has not been carried over. So if you've been accused, you will still be told there's a suit, but you won't be told how to contest it. So that's what the Election Commission wants to keep in.
So that was a part of the earlier amendment, that they must be informed of their rights before questioning or a hearing.
Okay. So Election Commissioner Risvik, do you think that is an accurate, that addresses your concerns?
Sorry, is Matt saying that it's already in there? Could you point out which line that is?
Senator Mass.
We made an amendment earlier that would add to the end of the 13.2.11 section. I'm just looking at this bill. I don't see where it got added, but I made an amendment earlier to add a 13.2.11.6 to the bill.
Could you say that number? Oh, point of information. Oh.
Yeah, 13.2.11.6.
Senator Mass, that is not in the bill.
Yes, I am aware. I made the amendment earlier, though, so yeah.
Speaker Ludwig.
Yeah, Vice Speaker Gonzalez accidentally threw it in the 5th enacted clause, so it's in the bill. It was inserted incorrectly, so.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah,
Yep.
I think we did approve that.
The motion was to add it to the 5th enacted clause. So.
All right, I'm going to motion to add that language to the 7th enacted clause then, in the correct position.
There's been a motion to add it to the 7th enacted clause.
Point of information, is it what I'm highlighting right now?
Yes.
Okay.
Did not hear a second. There it is. All right, are there any objections to consideration? Then we'll go into debate on it. Senator Advait.
Yeah, let's just clean stuff up. Vote yes. Senator Mass, I'm actually not yielded yet, so Senator Mass, what do you have to say?
The .6 section that was right above it.
Oh, there's another?
Yeah, so she grabbed.
Oh, okay.
So grab this .6 section as well.
I believe that's going to be a different amendment, right?
Yes.
Right, cool. Well, I'm going to yield and call the question on this amendment first.
All right, there's been a call to question on the amendment. There's been a second. Is the language, Vice Speaker Gonzalez, is the language for this amendment at least reflected on the screen or in the bill? Okay. All right, so then we'll go to a vote on that. I heard a call for UC. Is there any objection? Then seeing none, that amendment has been approved by unanimous consent. Senator Advait, the floor is back to you.
I'm going to move in the 5th to move the language in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Senator Mass, where is the non-conforming language?
Vice Speaker Gonzalez has it on the screen.
Oh, it's been reflected already. Cool. I'm going to move to have the amendment reflect whatever's on the screen then.
All right. Is there a second? All right, so then there's a second. Is there any objection to consideration? Then we'll go into debate on the amendment. Senator Advait.
Sorry. Call the question first.
Got a call to question, a second. Any objection?
UC.
There's been a call for unanimous consent. Is there any objection for UC? All right, then seeing none, that has been approved as well. We'll go back to the bill and Senator Advait's speaking privilege.
All right. Election Commissioner Risvik, have your concerns been addressed? Now.
I don't think that all of the concerns were addressed. I think there's a few more.
I believe, I'm just talking about the specific concern you emailed me about.
Yes, for this one, yeah.
All right, well, that's all I objected to the call to question for, so I'm going to call the question on the general bill again, because I think all the other issues we've talked about as a body.
All right, there's been a call to question on the bill as a whole in a second. Is there any objection? There has been. Do you withdraw?
Draw.
Great. Do you yield?
Senator, Vice Speaker Gonzalez, what's up? Sure, call the question.
There's been a call to question and a second. Is there any objection? All right, there's been an objection. Do you withdraw?
I withdraw.
Do you yield?
Senator Stenzel, what's up? Well, I do not withdraw. I call the
And
question.
Senator Advait's speaking privilege has been expired. There's a call to question and there's a second. Is there any objection? Great. Let's go into a vote. I'm going to do a roll. Oh, sorry. Speaker Ludwig, you with a closing statement.
Oh, it's fine. Okay. Sorry. Don't worry about that small thing. Yeah, so, all right, but seriously though, looking at this bill, you know, it's 2 months of work. I think we've had a very productive discussion here tonight. This does a lot of really good things, from the adversarial process to the permanent election code to, you know, the cleaning up that we did in certain parts of Chapter 13. This is a good bill. It represents a lot of thoughtful work and consideration. Senator Mass, Vate, and Weathers all poured a lot of time into this. There was a lot of, you know, at times heated discussion in Rules Committee about certain sections, and, you know, obviously there were amendments that passed tonight that I wasn't in favor of, but I think overall this bill represents a massive improvement to our election system, and I encourage you all to vote yes on this bill. I yield.
All right, we'll go into a roll call vote. Please vote yes, no, or abstain. Atagarla. Idvate. Anderson. Brown. Emery. Fahim. Grant. Goff. Hanyang. Hayes. Hovey. Gonzalez. Did I? Hurley. Klaptatauskas. Lewis. Lona. Ludwig. Mass. Pfeiffer. Rinchi. Samano. Schulte. Simonson. Springer. Stenzel. Stevens. Samuel. Weathers. Young. Zastro. Zavoski. The vote of 31 to 0, this bylaw bill passes. We'll now move on to new business 2020-2-033F, funding CE committee with Senator Samuel.
Yeah, motion to waive first read.
First, you gotta go title.
Oh, title. All right, motion to waive first read.
There's been a motion to waive second read, and there's been a second to allow debate and voting immediately on the bill. Trying to think if it's a debatable motion. Is there any objection to it? Okay, so then we will waive second read, and we'll go into full debate on the bill. So we'll start with an opening statement from Senator Samuel.
Yeah, these are just for our buttons, so we can get them by Monday. So, yeah.
All right, we'll go to the general discussion period. Senator Zastro.
Motion to accept Finance Committee amendments.
So the Finance Committee amendments have been proposed.
It is just changing the term.
So it's a technical fix to the year the bill is in.
Is that a friendly? Yeah. Thank you.
That's a friendly amendment. So Senator Zastro, back to you.
All right, so we talked about this in Finance Committee yesterday. Civic engagement is part of student government, so they're partnered, so we don't have to worry about PNC applying. Senator Samuel, have you gotten an update on how long it would take for the buttons to be produced?
Yeah, so we'd get them by Monday if we turn in the design tomorrow.
Sounds great. That's all I need to know. I will call the question.
I'm going to call to question a second. Any objection? Senator Samuel for a closing statement. Then we will go to a roll call vote. Please say yes, no, or abstain. Atagarla. Edvate. Anderson. Brown. Emery. Fahim. Grant. Goff. Gonzalez. Hanyang. Hayes. Hovey. Hurley. Klaptatauskas. Lewis. Lona. Ludwig. Mass. Pfeiffer. Rinchi. Samano. Schulte. Simonson. Springer. Stenzel. Stevens. Samuel. Weathers. Young. Zastro. Savoski. With a vote of 30 to 1 to 0, this bill passes. We'll go on to 2020-2-034F, funding hockey pep band.
Title.
With Senator Zastro.
So this is just funding hockey pep band, which is a club on campus. Most pep bands that you see for football, women's soccer, men's soccer, I don't know if there's a baseball one, are all funded through the music department at Iowa State. Hockey pep band is a student organization, and so they don't have the same kind of funding that other pep bands do. So this is funding basically PPE for their band in the same way that the other pep bands and the marching band have. So it's masks that have a little slit in the front, and that allows players to play their instrument while still wearing a mask. And then the bell covers makes it so you don't have spit coming out of the other end of the instrument. It's like a mask, but for the instrument itself, which is very cool. We will see this next Tuesday on Finance Committee unless there are any questions.
All right, are there any questions of intent? And seeing none, we'll move on to 2020-2-061SA, ski and snowboard debt contract, again with Senator Zastro.
Title.
Move to consider as read.
So this is a debt contract. We'll see this in Finance Committee.
Any questions of intent? Then seeing none, we'll go to 2020-2-062SA, funding, women's hockey debt contract with Senator Zastro.
Title.
Consider as read.
So I guess we're funding everything under that hockey dome, but we'll see this on Tuesday.
Are there any questions of intent? All right, then we'll go to 2020-2-035F, funding outreach ambassadors with Vice Speaker Gonzalez.
Yes. Hi.
Can you do the title thing?
Oh, title.
Move to consider as read.
Just gonna let it load so you guys can see it. Yeah, so $105, outreach ambassadors. These buttons are gonna be really cool. We're really excited for them. If you have any questions, let us know.
All right, are there any questions of intent? Seeing none, go to 2020-2-063SO, approving the 2020-2021 election apportionments with Speaker Ludwig.
Title.
Move to consider as read.
Yep, so this is the yearly apportionments bill that the Election Commission is required to submit to the Speaker. Every year we look at population levels on campus and sort out which constituencies need how many seats. Looking at the populations this year, there are no changes to any of the colleges except for, I believe, the graduate college, which has been reduced to 2, or it should be. So,
are there any questions of intent? And seeing none, we'll move on to closing announcements. Please put your placard up if you have a closing announcement. Finance Director Class.
Hi, one more time. PNC's up next week. Please look at it. And when they send it out, please look at that again. And if you have questions, please ask. We fund all of it according to PNC, unless they're partnered, as you just heard. But please look. It determines all of annuals, which is like $1.5 million. So it's just like really important to know. So thanks. Bye.
President Fritz.
Yes, so I will be announcing the winner of the costume contest that will win a peppermint brownie. Redeem at your convenience. First, I would like to mention some honorable mentions. First is Speaker Ludwig for being Ferris Bueller. However, the reason I am not picking you is because you are at Senate, which is not a day off, so it's not really fitting with the brand there. Next, Vice President Schrader was also an honorable mention. However, I find it concerning that you're skipping your shift at McDonald's to be here. Therefore, I will not be choosing you for that reason.
Essential worker.
Senator Springer is also an honorable mention. However, she's a mime. However, she did speak to explain her costume to me, and for that reason, you are out. I also really enjoy, the sitting president is here as well. However, I find the lack of Secret Service concerning. So for that reason, I will not be selecting that. And finally, Mason Zastro and Dawson Weathers dressing as each other is friendship goals. However, I did have to ask what you guys were. So unfortunately, for that reason, I will not be choosing you two either. But it does appear that we have a President Winterstein in the room. So I will be selecting Senator Schulte for the winner of the Peppermint Brownie. Yeah, so that's my fun announcement. Other than that, we only have 2 Senate sessions left, and the year is semester is quickly winding down. So, if there are things that you want to get done before the end of the semester, now is the time to do it. Really consider how have you impacted your constituents so far. What would you still like to do during the semester, and really take that into consideration in these next few weeks. Thank you.
Senator Hovey.
Yeah, I just would like to reiterate from my update earlier. Please come to the Focus Pocus Mental Health Walk on Saturday at 12. It starts at the Campanile. The ISU PD police dog will be there. There will be people tabling. There will also be at those tables tips on how you can better your mental health. I think it would be a great Senate bonding event. So come in a costume and kick off your Halloween day on a good note. That's it. Happy Halloween week.
Senator Advait.
Hello, everybody. Okay, so the first thing I'd like to talk about is well, first of all, enjoy seeing me as I am right now. This is the only Senate meeting you're going to see me not wearing a button-down and a tie and being really serious, so yay. The second thing I have to talk about is the importance of a personal/professional split in Senate. And normally I don't think this is something that needs to be said, but on the floor, right, we're debating ideas. We're not debating each other. And just because one of us thinks an idea is bad doesn't mean I have anything against you personally or the other way around. And normally in Senate, right, so we did this before COVID. We'd have these sort of debates, and then the next week we'd all be at a student government party together, having a good time together, and so we'd have that sort of personal, person-to-person bonding, which isn't really happening this year. The reason I bring this up is because we do have, as has been said multiple times already, we do have an event this Saturday. It's called the Mental Health Walk, and I think it's a great way for us to get to know each other in Senate and get to know each other on a personal level, which I think is a really good way to sort of build that personal bond that we haven't really been able to thanks to the pandemic. On top of that, the police, Zosia, the ICPD therapy doc, is going to be there, so win. Plus, if you're my mentee and you're there, I'm going to count that as a mentor-mentee meeting. So if you're one of my mentees, another win. So there's literally no reason not to be there. Noon, Saturday, 31st of October, 2020. I'll see you there. Next update, Campus Safety Walk. I finally got in touch with Chief Newton, yay, and I'm really excited about how the Campus Safety Walk's going to go. Next thing, I'm going to talk to FPNM. And hopefully we'll have something up really, really soon. Number 4, I'm going to talk about, I would like to note, I'm just going to make the lectures update for this week because my very wonderful co-chair, Speaker Ludwig, neglected to do it last week. So as the chair of this committee, I'm not going to stand for this, Speaker Ludwig. So long story short, from tomorrow until the next week, we're going to have, literally tomorrow, we have Short Circuit, How to Innovate Through Comedy by Abram Higginbotham tomorrow at 5 p.m. On the 30th of October, we're going to have Innovation in Agriculture by Dr. Bill Christensen at 1:30 from 12 p.m. to 1:30 p.m. And I can see some senators are really pumped up for it. I love it. Let's go. After that, we're going to have White Mansions, Black Bodies, Jordan Peele's Get Out, and The New Age Slave Plantation by Dr. Novotny Lawrence on the 5th of November, 2020 at 6 p.m. And I think, that'll be it for the lectures update. And the last thing I wanted to talk about is something we talked about on the floor earlier. And I'd like to apologize for Senator Zastrow if I gave the wrong idea when I said Senate meetings are not the primary thing we do. It is a really important component of what we do as senators. I guess what I was trying to say is we were elected to make the student experience better. And I think we need to look beyond just being in meetings and just voting on things. It's our responsibility to look out for what our constituent needs are and just general student body needs are, because we are an advocacy group, among other things. And if you see something, if there's something you're passionate about, please bring it up. Go to the administration, bring it up in Senate. Let's bring attention to it. Go to Student Initiatives Committee. Keep the energy going. That's all I have to say. Everybody have a wonderful night.
Senator Zastrow.
All right, y'all, sorry to be a bummer, but I got 3 dreadful topics for us. So first up, Halloween this weekend, really exciting. Please, please, please do not go out and party. There's still a pandemic going on, and it seems like a great opportunity to let out a little steam with finals on the horizon. But, 4 weeks after Halloween is Thanksgiving, when we're all going to go home. Let's not create a spike right before we all go to see our family. Number 2 is the election. It's on Tuesday. No matter who you're voting for, you're afraid that the other person's going to win, so please go vote. Number 3, PNC. So as Finance Director Class mentioned, that's going to be on a first read for Senate next Wednesday. Finance Committee finalized some amendments yesterday to PNC, and I'm going to be sending out a version of that in the next couple days, so you guys get a advanced look at it way before the packet's out on Monday. Hopefully that means that you'll be able to look over it quick, and we can see it in any things that people think need addressing on Tuesday, so that we can get some preliminary language, so that we don't have to looking at potential bylaw changes, trying to figure out wording, and hopefully any amendments that we want to discuss on the floor, we'll be able to have all and ready. So 3 great things that we got coming up. Please be safe, please be civically engaged, and please be excited to review PNC. I yield.
Senator Young.
Yeah, I just wanted to give an update. So if you guys remember that Dean Grooms of the Veterinary College came and spoke to us about diversity, equity, and inclusion and what the college has been doing following last spring's censure. And he actually reached out to Senator Goff and I, and we met with him and the leaders of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee and some other leaders of our college and spoke about how we can really expand upon the programming that they've put into place. And I'm really excited to share that the college is not only looking at the option of creating an experimental elective focused on diversity and inclusion in veterinary medicine, but they're also thinking about the idea of kind of creating an entire certification program for students to become certified in diversity, equity, and inclusion before graduating and becoming veterinarians. So I think that's super cool, and I just wanted to share and brag about Senator Goff.
Great. My only closing announcement is go to the mental health walk. There's candy, there's hot chocolate. We were all in here when we passed the bill funding it, so you might as well get some. Bring your friends and figure out the resources. And Senator Simonson, I'm scared of how long that's going to get. With that, I'll give Vice Speaker Gonzalez.
Hi, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. So I just wanted to give a quick note. I just want to emphasize that we're a body here to serve students and the Iowa State University community. We all also agreed to join and be a part of this great organization. I'm personally really passionate about student government. So this is a collaborative process and requires good relations among ourselves, with our peers, and with the administration and faculty. So just keep that in mind when you're interacting with others. Speaking privileges should focus on the bill, not be personal endorsements. It's appropriate to show concerns on specific language and issues, but just be mindful to use the time that we have wisely. Redundancy and running on hypotheticals can pose a risk and can limit the opportunities for new ideas and conversations to be had, or brainstorm some solutions. So I would encourage also that those who aren't as traditionally active in our meetings to speak up. You guys are all very capable, smart human beings. And so don't be scared. Clarify, ask questions, ask around. Like, you guys are all here for a purpose, and I 100% encourage you all to do so. And then also, thank you all for participating today. If you wore a costume, it's really fun and brings a little light into the week, especially on a Wednesday. And some of y'all are very creative. I love to see it. And then, as well, you have until the end of this week to get your second mentor-mentee meeting done for the month of October. I'm still missing a couple of emails. If there's been an issue or something, just let me know. Communication's always the best way to clarify things. And then other than that, just have a safe, healthy, and happy Halloween weekend. Thank you.
Speaker Ludwig.
All right. Good meeting tonight. Just going to touch on a couple things. First, I don't know what Senator Simonson has in his hands, but watching it just slowly grow over the course of the meeting has been a joy, and so I thank him for that. I'd also like to respond to some of the comments that President Fritz made. First, the title is Essential Worker Schrader.
Yeah.
I think it's important that we use our titles correctly in this room, so I just wanted to clear that up. And also, I just want to say, I don't know how I was supposed to win this contest if I can't be here. So, like, I just think it's kind of a high bar, so I just want to throw that out there and say, you know, I don't think that was a totally fair result for me, but whatever. On a more serious note, finals are coming up, so I think, you know, we're all maybe on a, you know, dancing on a tightrope here, maybe a little stressed. Take care of yourself. You know, we're all members of student government. We have our obligations here, but your students first. Do what you need to do well in your classes and continue being a successful student. So take care of yourselves. Take time to yourself. You know, just a couple more weeks till the end of this semester. You know, and with that, you know, the end of the semester coming up, you know, it's really important to take stock in what you want to do in student government this year and, you know, what projects you want to work on. We're getting close to the point where, you know, it's, before you know it, it's the beginning of the next semester, and, you know, we have two and a half months until the election of the new Senate. And so if you've got projects, if you've got big projects, move on that now, start making plans, get to work on it. And in relation to that, if you have big projects and you want to pass a bill before the end of this semester, that I'm going to need it by next week. Most bills in Senate, save for a very small exception of a couple different types, require 2 reads. We've got, you know, the PNC bill coming up. We will probably see some bill amending certain sections of the election code coming up. So the next 2 meetings are going to be pretty packed. So if you've got things that you want to work on, get them to me soon. I do not want to have to waive second read at the last meeting of the semester and cut you all short on an ability to debate a bill thoroughly. So keep that in mind. And then lastly, next week is the election. If you have not voted, if you do not have a plan to vote, please make one. I think it is so important to be civically engaged. You know, there are so many important issues to be decided in this election, and it doesn't matter where you end up on those issues. The point is, whatever you believe, you need to get out there, vote, make your voice heard. You know, this isn't just electing a president, although, you know, I am interested in whose Twitter we're gonna have to follow next year. But there's a lot of important down ballot races, congressional races, you know, local races that are very important. So please get out, vote. Go Cyclones. Move to adjourn.
Any objection?